The federal courthouse in Columbus, Ohio, stands like a granite fortress under a heavy gray sky on a tense May morning in 2025, its marble hallways echoing with the staccato of footsteps. Law clerks in pressed suits, press assistants clutching notepads, and legal interns pretending not to stare as a pivotal moment unfolds. The air outside is thick with humidity and anticipation. Reporters camped near the sidewalk, their cameras poised, microphones ready, shouting questions into the void. "Are you here to surrender?" Inside, the atmosphere is a pressure cooker. The courtroom's high ceilings and oak-paneled walls leaning in, amplifying the low murmur of pre-hearing motions, the rustle of papers, and the whispers of aides behind clipboards. This isn't a routine hearing. It's a detonation waiting to happen, a clash between power and truth that will ripple far beyond these walls. At the center of this charged arena walks Representative Jasmine Crockett, a Texas Democrat whose quiet purpose belies the storm she's about to unleash. Her navy blazer is plain, her cream top unadorned, her stride steady, her expression flat. No bright lipstick, no pearls, just a leather folder in hand and a resolve that defies the narrative of her impending takedown. Across from her, Judge Clarence Thomas, a towering figure of judicial authority, takes his seat early, his presence imposing, his silence a warning. This is no place for grandstanding. When Crockett, expecting arrest for contempt, stands to address the court, she doesn't defend herself. She exposes a secret network of corruption so deep, so meticulously documented, that it leaves Thomas visibly stunned, the room frozen, and the internet ablaze, proving that truth, when wielded with unrelenting courage, can crack the foundations of power. The courtroom is a microcosm of America's legal and political fault lines. Its rows packed with a tense, eclectic crowd, law clerks scribbling notes, press assistants whispering updates, and interns stealing glances at the woman at the center of the storm. The public is barred, but the room is far from silent. The hum of anticipation palpable as legal aides shuffle clipboards and a court stenographer readies her machine. Crockett, representing Texas's 30th Congressional District, strides through the wide glass doors, ignoring the reporter's shouts, her hands free, her demeanor unyielding. She's no stranger to high-stakes battles. Her career as a public defender and congresswoman, marked by a fierce commitment to justice, honed in Dallas courtrooms and D.C. hearing rooms where she's faced down power with facts and fire. Today, she's arrived from a sleepless night in a Columbus hotel, her hours spent reviewing emails, memos, and sworn statements. Her leather folder a fortress of evidence, names, dates, and transactions that could unravel a web of corruption tied to the heart of Congress. Her lawyers, Naomi Reese, a former federal prosecutor turned civil rights attorney, and Gabrielle Dunn, a brilliant legal analyst, flank her, their faces unreadable, their trust in her palpable. She takes her seat, placing the folder before her, hands folded, eyes steady, as if she's already seen the end game. Judge Thomas, a figure synonymous with judicial finality, presides from the bench, his early arrival a signal of the hearing's gravity. His presence looms large, not just for his decades on the Supreme Court, but for what he represents, a system that bends rarely, if ever, under pressure. He doesn't look at Crockett as she enters, his gaze fixed on the documents before him, his silence a reminder that this is his domain, not Congress. The federal prosecutor, a sharp-dressed man with an expensive but ill-fitting suit, stands, clearing his throat. Your Honor, the United States brings a motion to proceed with a contempt charge against Representative Jasmine Crockett, pursuant to Title II, Section 183.02, following her refusal to comply with a lawful summons issued by the Congressional Ethics Review Board. Thomas nods once, his voice clipped. Proceed. The prosecutor glances at Crockett, reading aloud. The Congresswoman knowingly failed to appear as required without adequate legal excuse and has thus obstructed due process. The word obstructed lands, and Crockett mutters, "Obstructed!" Not loud, but audible. drawing quick looks from her lawyers and a slight lift of Thomas's eyes. The prosecutor presses on. We ask for immediate recognition of contempt and that the defendant be remanded into custody until she complies. Thomas leans forward, his tone measured. Congresswoman Crockett, do you have any response before I make a ruling? Crockett stands, every eye in the room turning to her, the stenographer pausing, the air thick with expectation. Your Honor, she says, her voice calm, steady. Before you make a decision that could permanently alter my public record and, more importantly, my life, I request permission to address the court directly. The request is bold. Most defendants defer to counsel. Most lawyers insist on it. But Crockett's gaze locks onto Thomas, unwavering. He hesitates, then nods. Proceed. She reaches for her leather folder, pulling out a sealed manila envelope, holding it up with deliberate precision. This is a sworn statement, signed, notarized, and witnessed, she says, her voice cutting through the room's hush. It contains details of communications, threats, and coercive messages sent by individuals whose names you will recognize, Your Honor. Names tied directly to the reason I'm sitting here today. The room falls silent. Not a cough, not a rustle, just the weight of her words. Before I'm arrested, I want this court to hear the truth about why that summons was sent and what I was told would happen if I didn't cooperate. Not just to me, but to others. Thomas narrows his eyes, his fingers tapping once, his face unreadable, but the air shifts, the courtroom crackling with the promise of something explosive. 2 weeks earlier, in a rain-soaked Washington, D.C., Crockett stood behind a thick oak door marked Restricted Members Only, the muffled hum of voices seeping through. Room 340B in the Rayburn House office building was a fortress of secrecy, a place where reputations were built or destroyed. No cameras or phones allowed, just notebooks, rules, and the quiet machinations of power. Inside, the ethics subcommittee had begun without her, a deliberate slight. 5 committee members, 1 ethics attorney, 2 congressional aides, and Congressman Ronald Beckman, the chair from Idaho, sat in a semicircle, their faces a mix of boredom and calculation. Beckman, known for twisting legal definitions like clay, barely looked up as Crockett entered, 3 minutes late but unapologetic, her slim binder under her arm. We've already begun, he said, his voice cold, no greeting offered. She took her seat, placing the binder before her, and cut through the formality. Then, let's skip the pleasantries. You're not here to discuss ethics. You're here to punish me for asking the wrong questions. Beckman flinched, a subtle twitch, caught by Crockett and Representative Deirdre Lane from Missouri, who shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. The hearing was ostensibly about Crockett's disruption during a classified oversight session on House appropriations, where she accused a colleague of burying budget allocations linked to private defense contracts, demanding a disclosure vote. Her mic was cut mid-sentence, and now she faced allegations of obstruction. Beckman leaned forward, his tone rigid. What we're doing today is deciding whether your behavior reflects a pattern of obstruction against the committee's process. Crockett's voice was sharp, unyielding. No. What you're doing is dressing up retaliation in legal language. You're trying to intimidate me with a public censure, so I back off what I've found. I'm not backing down. Beckman slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing. You will not speak out of turn. Crockett didn't blink. I'm not here for theater. I'm here to remind you I don't answer to threats. You want to throw rules at me? Show me the rule I broke, not some vague bylaw nobody's touched in 20 years. Lane's fingers drummed on her folder, her unease palpable, as an aide whispered urgently to her, the room's tension spiking. Beckman's voice lowered, a warning. You've pushed too far, Representative Crockett, and if you walk out, there will be consequences. Crockett stood, collecting her binder. You already made up your mind before I walked in, so I might as well leave with my dignity. As she turned to the door, Beckman called after her. Failure to comply will result in disciplinary action and a formal summons. She paused. not turning. Then you'd better draft it fast, because you won't like what I have in return. The door closed behind her, the sound a quiet prelude to the storm she was about to unleash. In the days that followed, Crockett assembled her arsenal: emails, text threads, internal memos, and names she'd never spoken aloud, figures whose jobs and secrets were shielded by power and privilege. She enlisted 2 lawyers, Naomi Reese, a former federal prosecutor turned civil rights attorney, and Gabriel Dunn, a brilliant legal analyst known for dismantling large-scale federal cases. "This is serious," Naomi warned, reviewing her evidence. "But if what you're showing us is real..." "It is," Crockett said flatly. Gabriel, more cautious, added, "Power doesn't like to be cornered even if you're right. They'll paint you as emotional, reckless." Crockett's response was unwavering. "I know how they'll paint me, but this time I'm holding the brush." Back in the courtroom, she's not just holding it. She's painting a masterpiece of truth that no one can erase. The courtroom is still, Crockett standing at its center, the sealed manila envelope in hand. Her lawyers silent, trusting her lead. She peels open the seal with precision, pulling out a notarized cover sheet signed by a former legislative aide turned whistleblower, followed by 6 typed pages of her sworn statement. Looking directly at Thomas, she begins to read, her voice steady, each word a hammer striking stone. "My name is Jasmine Crockett. I have served in Congress since 2021. I stand before you not to defend myself from contempt, but to expose the reason I was summoned in the first place." The prosecutor stiffens, gripping his desk, a faint cough echoing from the bench. "This court should be aware that the charge against me, non-compliance with a summons from the Ethics Subcommittee, was not the result of negligence or defiance. It was the result of conscience, because what I refused to sign was not an impartial review, but a manufactured report intended to hide misappropriation of federal contracts." The room freezes, silence descending like a dropped weight. Thomas's fingers steepling beneath his chin, his face neutral, but his posture shifting. Crockett flips to the second page, her voice unwavering. "In October, I requested documentation related to defense allocation packages submitted between June and August. I received redacted files. Upon further investigation, I discovered that certain line items, amounting to over $19 million, had been funneled to shell companies operated by the brother-in-law of Representative Ronald Beckman." The accusation lands, no gasps, just a stillness that feels like the world holding its breath. Thomas's eyes narrowing, his fingers tapping once. Crockett presses on, her words a relentless tide. "After questioning these allocations in an internal hearing, I was approached by 2 aides. One informed me, off the record, that if I didn't back off, I'd be buried in procedural action. The other said, flat out, they'll hit you where the law lets them." That was 3 days before I was summoned to the ethics meeting. The same meeting where I was told failing to participate would result in legal repercussions. And here we are. Thomas shifts, his gaze piercing as Naomi stands, her voice calm. "Your Honor, we have copies for the court." The prosecutor rises, his face tight. "Objection, Your Honor. This statement may be self-serving and she's under oath." Gabriel counters. "If the prosecution believes her evidence is fabricated, we welcome a forensic audit of every communication and file presented." Thomas raises a hand, silencing the exchange. "The court will review the documents. Continue." Crockett turns to the final page, her voice steady, resolute. "I understand what this looks like, a congresswoman facing contempt, slinging accusations to avoid punishment. But I ask this court to consider, if you received threats for uncovering misuse of taxpayer dollars, what would you do? Stay silent to protect comfort, or speak, knowing the system would punish you for it?" "I chose to speak." She folds the paper, placing it on the table, her hands steady, the room a frozen tableau, X already stirring. Crockett exposes trends, a user posting, "Jasmine just dropped a nuke in court. Beckman's done." Thomas clears his throat, his voice measured. "This court will recess for 20 minutes. He stands, exiting through a side door without a glance, but the weight of Crockett's testimony lingers, the room crackling with unspoken questions. The recess doesn't ease the tension, it amplifies it. Aides whispering, clerks exchanging glances, the prosecutor pacing, his earlier confidence eroded. Naomi slides a second envelope to Crockett marked CT Originals, whispering, in case the court needs verification. Gabriel leans in. He's rattled. Crockett taps her fingers once, her voice low. Let them try to bury it now. 10 minutes into the recess, the clerk re-enters, requesting printed copies of Crockett's folder, which Naomi hands over without hesitation. A young court aide exits with the copies, passing a staffer carrying a gray binder who whispers to Naomi. Crockett tilts her head. Another submission? Naomi nods. From a former staffer who saw the hearing transcript, says she's got something to add. The shift is palpable, the room's dynamics tilting as Thomas returns, his posture heavier, his glasses adjusted, his gaze fixed on the now thicker stack of documents. Thomas speaks without preamble, his voice sharper. This court has completed a preliminary review of the documents submitted by Representative Crockett and her legal team. We've also received third-party statements, whistleblower claims, and confirmation from multiple sources that the evidence warrants further examination. He pauses, looking at Crockett. As such, the contempt proceedings against you are hereby suspended indefinitely. No fines, no arrest. The prosecutor, replaced by DOJ counsel Elena Choi, stands, her tone deliberate. Your Honor, the department will conduct its own review, but we have no further motions. Thomas nods. This hearing is no longer about your actions, Congresswoman. It's about the credibility of those who sought to silence you. He closes the folder, his voice firm. Court is adjourned. The gavel hits, a quiet sound that lands like a thunderclap. Crockett's lawyers exhaling, the prosecutor's shoulders slumping, X erupting. Crockett wins trends. A user posting, Jasmine just turned a contempt hearing into a corruption expose. Outside, the courthouse steps are a media circus. Reporters shouting, Is it true? Are you accusing House members of corruption? Crockett walks past, her lawyers flanking her, sliding into a black SUV without a word. Inside, she turns to Gabriel. We cracked the shell. Let's see what crawls out. The story spreads like wildfire. X posts surging, As Beckman exposed, As shell contracts, local stations airing raw excerpts of her statement, national anchors calling it a political earthquake. In D.C., phones ring off the hook, aides scramble, and Beckman's office goes silent, his LinkedIn profile vanishing by sundown. A week later, at a Toledo, Ohio town hall, Crockett faces a small crowd, no cameras, just folding chairs and coffee. A bus driver asks, Will anything change? She replies, They're scared enough to listen now. The quiet applause lingers, a testament to a truth that's cracked open a corrupt system, proving courage can shift the narrative when it refuses to be silenced. Call to action. Yo, if Jasmine Crockett's courtroom detonation, exposing corruption and stunning Judge Thomas, set your soul on fire, smash that like button, and subscribe for more truth bombs. Drop a comment. What hit you hardest? Share this with your squad on X, TikTok, or your group chat, and keep the convo roaring. Don't just watch, act. Hit vote.gov to register and make your voice soar in the next election. Truth's got no filter, just fire, so let's roll.